X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Good evening, one and all. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide, toll-free, 800-610-7035. Email is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest tonight is the hardest working guy when it comes to getting the truth exposed and knocking down the government truth embargo against telling the truth on extraterrestrials, UFOs, and alien visitations. And I'm talking about Stephen Bassett. And Stephen is a political activist and leading advocate for ending the 68-year government-imposed truth embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. Everyone knows about Stephen. Stephen, you're out there, you're talking, you're working. First of all, thanks very much for coming back on the show. Great pleasure having you. A couple of weeks ago, we had Robert Salas on. And I have to tell you, Stephen, listening to Robert tell us the different cases where he himself had firsthand information as well as evidence of these unknown craft, and what they were doing to U.S. missile silos in the United States. How can the powers to be keep such a lid on such an important topic?
Without question, the testimony of Robert Salas and the other SAC-based personnel, Strategic Air Command-based personnel, almost all Air Force, that he has, along with the work of Robert Hastings, brought together, some of which have come forward, some of which are waiting, they're on the fence, some of which can never come forward, regarding the tampering with nuclear weapon systems in the United States, is the most important evidence, I believe, from the standpoint of the media, the Congress, the White House, and this advocacy process we're pursuing. This evidence really tells you all you need to know about the circumstances we're dealing with, which is that we're under a policy of embargo, truth embargo on this issue. We have been since the late 40s. It was solidified by about 1953. How can I say that? It's very simple. Bob Salas has come forward almost 10 years now. He's written a book called Fated Giant.
Yes.
A press conference was held in 2010 in which he and four other, I believe, witnesses, including Air Force officers, not testified, but spoke to the press about this nuclear tampering incidents that have occurred at places like Malmstrom Air Force Base going all the way back to '67. There were media there. They didn't follow up. The Washington Post did a humor piece on it. Bob Salas and other Air Force officers testified at the citizen hearing on disclosure in 2013. There was media coverage. We had dozens of articles written about it. It was a webcast to the world. About 8,000 people listened to it. And of course, it's gotten a lot of publicity since. Have any of the media followed up on that nuclear tampering testimony? No, they haven't. Has the Air Force commented on it? No, it hasn't. Has the Defense Department commented? No, it hasn't. Of course, Bob's written a book, Fated Giant. No comment on that. So here's the situation. It's just simple logic. If there was nothing to this, you can be sure that the Air Force, the government, would be all over these guys, wanting to know what the hell they're doing.
Sure. Why
are they saying things like this? They are retired military officers, mostly Air Force captains with national security clearances, probably some non-disclosures, maybe they've expired. But of course they can't, because they know fully well that this testimony is true. And if they engage it at all, if they comment at all, then they invite questions from the media. And of course, questions is the absolute, enemy of the truth embargo. And then let's take the testimony on itself. Nuclear weapon systems turned off, nuclear missiles turned off in sequence, using a technology unknown to the United States, disengaging systems which theoretically it's impossible to do, and doing it more than once, is an enormous news story. It's about as big as it gets. And so, one, the fact that this news, this issue, this particular evidence is so profound, and the fact that the media cannot engage it and they will not respond, is all you need to know that there is a full policy of the United States still in place to not acknowledge this issue no matter what is said, no matter what evidence is brought forward, no matter how rank and station you are. It will not be acknowledged. Not yet.
Stephen, stand by. You and I have to take our first commercial break. Exonation's Stephen Bassett is our guest. ParadigmResearchGroup.org. We'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break. Don't go away. Exonation, Stephen Bassett is our special guest this hour. www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. Before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about the events that Robert Salas talks about, writes about. Other members of the military have done the same. Stephen, you've had petitions online. You've had press conferences. I'm shocked to hear that mainstream media will be there for the press conferences, and after that they drop the ball.
Well, that's the nature of the truth embargo. This is how it's worked. The truth embargo was practiced with great intensity during the Cold War.
Okay.
You didn't screw around with it, trust me. Before 1991, if you wanted to press this issue, there was going to be consequences. They were quite serious. So by the time the Cold War ended in 91, the truth embargo was entrenched. It was institutionalized. And one aspect of that truth embargo is that the press has been pretty much, going back 65 years, on a leash. Think of it like a dog in the front yard, on a leash to a stake stuck in the ground. That dog can roam anywhere in that yard it wants, but he can't go beyond the length of that leash. And that's how the media has been. They have written thousands, probably 20,000, 25,000 articles since 1947 in printed media, English language press around the world. Many, probably the higher percentage has happened in the last 7 years. There's been thousands of articles written about it. They write about sightings, they write about conferences, they write about this event, that event. But that's as far as they can go on the leash that they're on. They will not follow up with questions. They will not question the White House, the Pentagon, the Air Force, the CIA. They will not go investigatory mode. That is the understanding. That's just the way that it is. The amount of evidence that's been amassed has created countless questions that could be asked of these institutions. And I assure you they would be extremely uncomfortable to answer. And as long as the press doesn't ask those questions, the truth embargo continues to get a ride. That is just the nature of the truth embargo. You'd have to ask every reporter, every editor, every publisher, every head of every network personally and probably privately, why are you on that leash? Could you tell us? But of course, you can ask them, and if you did, they probably would not say anything.
If these networks are on a leash, and Steve, I'm not doubting you one bit, why are there so many UFO shows, alien shows on these networks? Why is the media playing these type of shows if the media is on a leash and they can't answer specific questions? You got
to differentiate between entertainment media and news media. The entertainment world, of course, is feasted on the extraterrestrial issue.
Yeah.
I've researched it. It's been well over 300 movies since 1951, counting all those ticket sales plus product sales, plus of course the scores and scores and scores of television series, advertising. We estimate that the total revenue in 2015 dollars is probably approaching $100 billion.
Wow.
In revenues to the entertainment industry, TV, film. The highest grossing movie of all time is about extraterrestrials, Avatar. There are 3 Avatar sequels in simultaneous production in New Zealand that will come out in successive years. Each one will do well over $1 billion. Why is this? Well, they're doing it because it makes money. And the reason it makes money is this. The American people, and by extension, a good deal of the world's people,
Sure.
have known for decades the extraterrestrial presence is real.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them figured out in 1949, some in 52, some in 61, whatever. Half the American people poll, and this is true of all the developed world, that they believe this phenomenon is extraterrestrial. UFOs, quote, are real. But the government denies it. The government says there is nothing there. There is nothing going on. You're not seeing craft. You're not being contacted by ETs. You're not being abducted. There is nothing going on. And so they've created this huge truth vacuum. And so the people who are aware at one level or another of what is easily the most extraordinary information the human race has ever, how would you say, become aware of,
Right.
unable to get anything from their government, go to the entertainment media for something. That's their way to connect to the issue. That's what serves their huge and growing curiosity about this. And so the media has capitalized on it and made a great deal of money. And to be fair, raised the awareness about the concept of extraterrestrial
Sure.
to almost 100% market penetration.
Steve, why is there this truth embargo? What does anyone have to fear from the truth of extraterrestrial existence being real? Blowing the cover off of it, what would be the harm?
First and foremost, there is a long, long list of truths which governments, including our government, greatly fear. Let's just get that out there right now.
Okay.
Governments do bad things. They make mistakes. They conduct bad policies. They sometimes do awful things, terrible things. And the truth of those are not matters they want in the public domain. With respect to the ET issue, as I've said many, many times, the truth embargo is a Cold War manifestation. They decided to embargo this issue with all the resources available because of the circumstances of 1947, 49, 50, 51, 52. They were faced with a potential third world war, nuclear, with the Soviet Union. They had ET technology, craft.
Right.
They didn't know what they could get from that. They didn't know the alien agenda. They were faced with some extremely big known unknowns.
Mm-hmm.
And so they made a national security decision until they knew where things were going to go with the Soviet Union, until they knew more about the ET reality. They simply were not going to allow it to be acknowledged. Okay, fine. This is not an unreasonable decision. I might have made it myself.
Okay.
But as the years rolled by, what happened is the Cold War, the World War III didn't happen, which would, of course, made all of this moot. What we did have was a Cold War that lasted not 5, 10, 15 years, it lasted 44 years. And it got progressively more dangerous with each passing year. So by the time of the mid-'80s, you had 6, 7 countries with nuclear weapons, a total of 75 to 80,000 nuclear weapons in stockpile, with many thousand of them on immediate launch status, including hardened silos, mobile launch vehicles, and the worst of all, submarines, directly off the coast. One mistake, and it's all over. And so the truth embargo remained absolutely locked down while the Cold War was in place. Nobody inside the military intelligence community was going to be able to make a case that would convince the larger managerial staff that, oh, it's okay now to tell the world there's extraterrestrials here. It wasn't going to happen. The door doesn't open until 92, when the Cold War is essentially over. But by 1992, after 44 years of successfully embargoing this issue, the embargo had become institutionalized. It was simply the way it was. And people didn't need to be reminded or sent threatening emails or whatever to be told that you just don't go there. They just don't go there. And that truth embargo has been slowly unraveling now for the last 20 years, given the fact the Cold War is over. But it isn't over. The truth embargo still remains. That is the best explanation I can give. Now, let me also point out that I'm afraid the success of the truth embargo and the success of all of the covert operations that were used to, quote, manage the world and defeat the Soviet Union and get what we wanted in South America and everywhere else. I'm afraid that truth embargo of the ET presidents and the other truth embargo empowered, emboldened the government to institute more and more and more secrecy, to do more and more things which were, how would you say, not necessarily legal or not necessarily advisable, but because they could be contained, embargoed, secretized, they would do it. And so the government has dug a deeper and deeper hole. And so the end of the ET truth embargo is not the only truth that's going to come out.
All right, we just want to remind everyone that Stephen Bassett is our special guest this hour, ParadigmResearchGroup.org. And Stephen, here's a question for you, my friend. What is your take on all the UFO files that were released over a couple of weeks ago by the U.S. government? Were there any smoking guns found?
Well, that was a very interesting story. Here's what happened. John Greenwald, who has built for many years the Black Vault website with huge numbers of documents in it, was provided the entire set of Blue Book, Project Grudge, and Project Sign files by a supporter who had gone and data mined them. Data mined them from a website called Fold3, which is part of the Ancestry.com Mempire, which is a very big company. John, I think with all the best intentions, and possibly without checking all the legal implications, because it's a very complex domain, the matter of legal copyrights, particularly on the internet, spent an enormous amount of time converting these files. These are files that have been out there for decades. This is a Blue Book signed grudge file. Go back to 1969 and before. They've been available. They're out there. Not a lot of people know where they are. They're not exactly prominent, but nevertheless, John got these, and knowing that the Black Vault is extremely well known, very popular, he put a lot of time into enhancing the searchability of these documents through digitizing software. Took him a long time. He published those to a site connected to the Black Vault, the Project Blue Book site component of the Black Vault. And this is where things get interesting. Well, guess what? Most of the reporters and editors working today in the press, in printed press, were not even born.
Wow.
The files were closed in '69. And John didn't issue a press release. He didn't issue a very specific press release. He simply announced this to his Black Vault list, very large list. And it emerged organically out of the internet, Facebook and what have you. And a number of these reporters, when they saw this, came under the false impression that the Air Force had just released 130,000 pages of documents pertaining to the extraterrestrial phenomena, and they went nuts. 400 or 500 articles were printed about this before it started to become, they beware that, well, no, these files have been around there, but this is a new compilation that has been put out. And this includes some television coverage. So what happens next is that once Fold3 learns about this, they are not happy, and they filed a cease and desist order or demand with John to pull the entire compilation down.
All right, we've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour here, Steve. Thanks very much for coming on. Great talking to you and seeing you, good sir. You're, like I said, you're one of the hardest working guys to get the truth out there, because it is. Exonation, Stephen Bassett is our guest, www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. And we'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Exonation, welcome back. Stephen Bassett is our special guest. This gentleman is the The hardest working advocate when it comes to getting the information on the truth embargo against extraterrestrials that has been going on for 68 years. Hats off to you, Steve. I know how hard you work. Have you seen any progress in the work that you're doing? Are you getting any support from any senators or any congressmen?
The support from the Congress remains to be seen. You don't get support. In other words, nobody just says, okay, look, I'll put in a good word for you.
Right.
The Congress is basically locked up on the issue. There have only been a few exceptions. However, there's been a lot of indications that we're moving forward, we're making significant progress. One of those was what I was just referring to. The situation with Black Vault was
Right.
this. When the press saw something of that magnitude, wow, the Air Force released, they went absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And if you Google U.S. Air Force, or wait a minute, Air Force releases UFO files, and you can see these hundreds of articles. And what that says is that the press is starting to become hypersensitized to something breaking. And that's a good thing.
Yep.
And all of that press I'm going to use in my congressional hearing initiative. More dollars are coming in. There's more support. It's hardly major, but there's no question that there's more financial support for the advocacy work
Right.
than there ever has been. And that's made it possible for me to pursue the congressional hearing initiative here in Washington, which has been going on since November the 5th. There are more sightings. And of course, the citizen hearing on disclosure was a great success. So in general, the truth embargo continues to crumble, and the basis for it continues to erode. So I'm optimistic that we're close. Now, that would change if we have another 9/11 type event or something even worse, which is why we're in a hurry to get this done,
Sure.
why we can't simply wait for it to happen on its own. But as you know, Rob, the citizen hearing on disclosure brought 42 witnesses to testify for 30 hours before 6 former members of Congress in a mock congressional hearing that was filmed in its entirety.
Right.
20 sessions of testimony over 5 days. The record of that hearing, which was held in May of 2013, was shipped to every member of Congress's office on November the 5th, and those DVD sets, there's like 10 discs per set, would have arrived in those offices throughout November and early December. At the same time, we launched a social media campaign at faxonwashington.org, faxonwashington.org, the disclosure.media website, and also the Facebook page, the Disclosure Lobby. Those sites, and if you go there, you can get the easy directions on how to use them. Those sites have generated 1 million messages, Facebook, Twitter, and email, down on the entire Capitol Hill, on all of those offices, 1 million messages. And by the way, anyone in the world can participate, particularly in the fax and Twitter part of the social media campaign. These messages called on those offices to look at those DVDs, to look at that testimony, to meet with me as the registered lobbyist on this issue,
Right.
and reminding them that they want hearing. Since November, the January the 4th, we're gearing up a mainstream media campaign to get this out, that this campaign is underway. Also, every one of 160 members of 6 committees we're targeting, such as the 2 select committees on intelligence, the Space Science and Technology Committee, the Commerce, Science and Transportation Committee in the House, and so forth. So 160 members. Every one of those offices received a verbal request to meet with me. And they're now getting fax requests to meet with me on this issue. And the social media campaign will continue on through most of February. This is the most comprehensive effort ever to get congressional hearings in the modern era. The last congressional hearing had 3 people testify in 1968. It was a legitimate hearing, but it was done basically so they could say, we had one, now go away. Then they closed down Blue Book, they destroyed NICAP, and they were out from under the issue for about 9 years until Jesse Marcel Sr. started interviewing with Stanton Friedman. The people inside government that are managing this issue in the know are fully aware that if the kinds of witnesses available today were to testify under oath on Capitol Hill, the truth embargo would end. And so every attempt to get hearings since '92 has been blocked.
Wow.
This attempt is the most comprehensive effort ever. If we break through and one of those committees agrees to hold the hearings for the witnesses we've got ready to testify, those hearings will end the truth embargo, if the embargo isn't ended preemptively by the president, who has to go to the Pentagon and cut a deal in order to do it. But that deal can be done, and that's the deal we've been waiting for now for 66, 7, 8 years.
With the presidential election coming up in 2016, does this also help you and the work you're doing to get the truth out there? Are there other candidates who might, if elected, work with you to get the truth out there?
No, I don't think in those terms at all. President Obama, whoever the president is, and now it's Obama, has to cut a deal with the Pentagon. Without that deal, nobody can disclose, no president can disclose, because you see, the president and the Congress are no longer part of this issue. They're out of the loop. No member of Congress can go and see bodies or underground facilities or any of this primary evidence. They're not allowed. They have no need to know. The intelligence committees are out of the loop. They're not briefed at all, and neither is the president. And so they're shut out.
Yeah.
And so a deal has got to be struck. The job of the activist movement is to create a situation where the Pentagon and the White House realize that they simply have no choice but to cut that deal, because otherwise things are going to get worse. And the one thing that could get really bad very fast is this, and this is a message that I repeat over and over again. As of 2015, the President of the United States is not the only player here. There are a number of nations whose head of state could acknowledge the ET presence tomorrow,
Right.
prevent substantial evidence along with that announcement, and end the truth embargo. The two leading candidates are Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping of China. If either of those gentlemen were to end this truth embargo ahead of the United States, the geopolitical implications for the U.S. are catastrophic.
Yeah.
Let me be clear. Any advisor to the president who thinks that Vladimir Putin and the president of China are in our back pocket is a fool and needs to resign. They are not, and there are other heads of state that could do this. So the White House in the United States is running out of time. It needs to take this issue, put it out front, and end this truth embargo, and thus get the historical legacy of at least bringing that truth out finally.
Let me ask you, Steve, with all the people that you've talked to over the many years you've been an advocate for getting the truth out there, having said that, do you believe that these extraterrestrials pose a threat to national security or to the people of Earth?
I don't believe that the extraterrestrial presence is a destructive presence, and that the outcome of both the disclosure event and what I believe will be an open contact event, which will follow in a modest amount of time, will be unsatisfactory to the world's people. I believe that there are people inside government that think they're a threat. There are people inside our government that think almost anything is a threat.
Sure.
They'll wage war on anything. Anything that moves and anything that doesn't move. I understand that. But the evidence that we've accumulated is pretty substantial. And the overwhelming part of that evidence points to a relatively non-destructive engagement. I assure you, if the extraterrestrials wanted to be destructive, they could do a very good job of ending our nice little civilization. It's no contest.
Right.
Could not prevail, unlike the movies. They've not done that. They have done some things which are a bit disturbing, but we don't know the reasons why they're doing it. So now, but let me be clear.
Okay.
If the extraterrestrials, in fact, pose a threat to this planet, and there are members of the United States military and intelligence services that have known this, keeping this from the American people is not acceptable. Period. It isn't acceptable. This business, oh, well, you know, we don't want to upset you, and we don't want you rioting or going in the streets. We're just going to let you sit there and live your lives, and then very soon it's all going to go away because we know something really terrible is coming. That no longer works. That is unacceptable. It violates almost natural law to do this. These people do not have that right. They are not that superior, that smart, to be able to say to 7 billion people, we know something terrible is coming, but you don't have a need to know. And so there is, frankly, no basis, no reason, no logic, nothing now, circa 2015, that justifies the maintenance of this truth embargo one more day.
Stephen Bassett is our guest, www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. Always great talking to you, Steve. Hypothetical question. One nation with nuclear arms ticks off another nation with nuclear arms. The buttons are pushed.
Yeah.
Missiles are flying. Do you think that these ETs would intervene? Or do you think that they'd say, hey, we don't want to get involved?
I think that what I have seen from the evidence,
Yeah.
the answer is no. Doesn't mean it wouldn't. I'm just saying I don't think so. And I'll tell you this, it would be a disaster to test that theory.
Yeah, sure would.
Anybody that launches nuclear weapons,
Yeah.
well, first of all, why would you not launch nuclear weapons if you thought they were going to be taken out of the sky by extraterrestrials?
No. The question was if these two countries did.
Of
And
course.
I
they
was,
accidentally-
you know, would they? And you know, it's in today's society, Steve. Who knows what the hell's going to happen from one day to the next?
Look, Rob, you know, you interview lots of people.
Yeah.
You're on top of what's going on. Here's the situation we face now. Just a few days ago, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists moved the doomsday clock 2 minutes closer to midnight, to 3 minutes to midnight. Why do they do that? Because the same old policies, the same old thinking, the old paradigm methodologies, you know, human operating system 1.0 is still in full force. We're making one stupid mistake after another.
Yeah.
We're doing a whole lot of things that is increasing the risk that we're going to have some nuclear weapons used. It could be a terrorist attack, but then one nuclear weapon destroying a city could easily lead to a full-out engagement. We're still walking the knife's edge, and I can only say this: we have much more to worry about things going terribly wrong if we don't disclose than if we do disclose. Disclosure is a game-changing, worldview-changing event of such magnitude that it permits people and nations and NGOs and even religions to reset, hit the reset button, and rethink how they want to act, what they want to do, what's important to them in a post-disclosure world. Without disclosure, it's the same old world, and we'll continue to do the same things we've been doing for 10,000 years, which is to kill each other in huge quantities and blow things up.
How much power or how much influence does the religious aspect of different religious philosophies around the world influence the truth embargo?
Almost nothing. The religion has been used by government disinfo people to create what I call propaganda,
Right.
to justify maintaining the truth embargo. Religions rule business. Here's the fact. Here's the facts. 99+% of all the people who belong to a formal religion in this world do not want war.
No.
Their religions, in one way or another, pretty much are trying to move us away from war, away from violence.
Right.
You pick the religion, it's pretty much that way. Now, there are elements within some religion where that is not pursued. Ideological is different, but they are a minority, a tiny minority. But remember, a tiny minority of 6 billion people with religious affiliations is still more than enough to fly all the planes, man all the tanks, and wear all the suicide vests you could ever want. But the vast majority of people in religion, they don't want war. And so the disclosure amendment, if it helps to reset our worldviews and move us away from this behavior, completely falls into the mission statements of these religions. And they're already relatively prepared. The Catholic Church is leading the way, which is about 1.2 billion of the world's people. All of the Asian faiths, Hindu, Taoism, Buddhism, will not blink an eye to the extraterrestrial presence. Some fundamentalist Christians will be perhaps a little disturbed for a while, but they represent a relatively small percentage of people of faith. And so, no, religion is not a barrier, and religion is not in some way influencing the maintenance of the truth embargo.
What are the chances that before your work is completed and that the truth embargo is lifted, that ET will make a landing that cannot be denied? And what would be the implications and the ripple effect into all governments if this was to happen?
Well, as I've said many, many times, if you are someone that actually cares about the welfare of your citizens, about order, law, order, that you need to know something. And that's whether you're the president or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the head of a religious faith. It's something you need to get, you need to grok this very well. The difference between a force majeure disclosure by extraterrestrials closing, eliminating all doubt, their actions, massive ships over cities, whatever you want to use, and a self-disclosure prior to something like that by the heads of state with a decent amount of time to study and engage this issue and go back and sort out the truth and get information from governments. The difference between those two is rather staggering. The former will be a hammer blow to every social contract in the world. It will create panic, paranoia, distrust, violence. The disclosure event, the self-disclosure event, the latter event, is the way it has to happen, the way it should happen, and will obviously be far less disruptive. And then, of course, the learning curve time that will follow, which is going to be serviced well by all of our massive communications ability, the internet, websites, email, iPhones, all of the, television, cable, all of these modalities for this learning curve will be a huge asset. And then, if open contact takes place, it's going to be anticlimactic. And so anyone that's thinking, we'll just keep lying to the people because one day the ETs will disclose is making a colossal mistake.
Stephen Bassett, my guest this hour. Stand by, Stephen. www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Welcome back, everyone. The truth is out there, and Stephen Bassett, our guest this hour, is going to make sure it gets to each and every one of you. His website is www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. First of all, Steve, thanks very much for coming on the show tonight. It's always been a pleasure having you on the show over these many years. What can our listeners do to get involved? How can we, the Exo Nation, get behind Stephen Bassett and make a difference?
We'll get behind the disclosure advocacy movement. Right now, there's important stuff going on. If they go to FAX, F-A-X, onwashington.org, they can see how they can participate in a social media campaign. It's not hard, easy to do, and send messages to the Congress and emails to the Congress about the citizen hearing on disclosure DVD sets, which are in those offices now, and the fact they need to meet with me to discuss hearings for the witnesses ready to testify. If they go to disclosurepetition.org, they will see the latest petition that's on the White House website. It's only going to be up for 4 more days, and any more signatures will be helpful. It's got about 13,000. Every extra signature is helpful. And sign it. Sign the petition, spread the word. The Congressional Hearing Initiative is attempting to get a commitment from one of 6 committees to hold hearings for at least 25 to 30 witnesses that would be brought to testify on the extraterrestrial issue. Many of these testified at the mock congressional hearing held at the National Press Club in 2013 by PRG. These witnesses, and that was given under a citizen oath. These people are prepared to come to Washington and testify under federal penalty of perjury.
Wow.
To the same evidence. And there's other witnesses, very strong ones, which couldn't make the citizen hearing, which I believe will be available for the congressional hearing. Be assured that if Congress does this, those hearings are held, the truth embargo is over. And the message that I'm trying to send is that if that happens, Congress benefits, the president benefits, the country benefits, and the people benefit. Everyone wins. Right now, everybody is losing if you're not paying attention. The Congress is losing, the American people are losing, this country is in decline, we're entrenched in endless hyper-partisan warfare, we're broke, and the only thing that seems to happen with some regularity and effectiveness is we're able to gin up new wars at the drop of a hat. This has got to stop.
You know, the scary part is, Steve, is if once the truth embargo is over, Then there's a lot of questions to ask. Well, what else are you lying to us about and covering up?
And those questions will be asked, though that will take a while. First will be the transition into this post-disclosure world. A lot of good, some bad PR for the government. And then I believe a reformist movement will emerge out of this. And the closet, the basement's going to get cleaned out. We need to restructure. We need to reform. We are blocked from this because we're locked into a current system, which is almost encased in cement. We need to break that out.
Yeah.
Disclosure is our best chance. If we do not exercise these options, if we do not move to an age of reform, it's predictable that what is going on is going to lead to very, very bad consequences. And in our lifetime, certainly within the next 20, 25 years, easily, if not sooner, we have to change course. And when you're trying to change course of an entire planet and 7 billion people, you need a very powerful gravitational pull. Disclosure, the final acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence that we're not alone in the universe, has got that kind of gravitas. And that's our best shot, and we've got to get behind it if we can.
Steve Bassett, always a great pleasure talking to you. Keep the great work up, my friend. If there's anything we can do to help with the cause and get more people behind you, just let me know. Once again, Exonation, Stephen Bassett has been our guest this hour. www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. Steve, take care of yourself and keep your eyes to the sky, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
Exonation, Stephen Bassett. Once again, paradigmresearchgroup.org. I'll be back on the other side of this news break at 10.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.